All right, welcome to another podcast.
Yes.
You got the usual, the full peanut gallery is in effect. We got Patrick and Trevor behind the mic as always.
Hello.
What's up, T-Rev? How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's going just great.
So we met some trolls.
Oh,
How cool is that?
We've been trolled. I love it.
Super fascinating.
Oh,
we sent out a couple podcasts ago over Easter weekend, and just some fascinating stuff. So
I am so impressed at how people are just so not wanting to be involved, and yet there is just so much energy going into being involved.
Right.
Like, I don't know what that says, but I'm pretty sure it says something different than what they're saying. But it's interesting. Anyway.
So very interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say is if you haven't watched episode 12, my interview with Sarah Dyke, I think it's a must watch. I think it's so good. There's so much there. One of the most powerful conversations I think I've ever had. Usually when I come out of a conversation, I kind of feel like I'm at least somewhat valuable in this conversation. And literally my only role there was just to listen.
And cry.
And then she would talk, and then I'd cry, and then I would try to come up with a question. And so just so good. So make sure you check that out. Today we want to talk about current events.
Yes. In the news.
Did you know? I remember before COVID, there used to be other things that we talked about.
What?
I don't know. Like, I'm thinking too, like, what did the news publish?
I've been thinking about all the crazy types of like situations that when things finally open back up, that people are going to walk into. We're going to be like 2 years removed in school from people understanding how things operate in the high school. I mean, what it's going to be like walking down the hallways the same way that you used to, and all the different events that have been canceled. I mean, who's going to be like the starting like offensive line at East Elgin? Like,
have you ever thought about waitresses and waiters, how they're always wearing a mask, and if you have a really crummy customer, you can give them a face and they won't even know that you're giving them a face. What are they going to do now? I
thought they were always laughing at my jokes. Maybe they're not even laughing.
Is this like an experience-based thing? Is that what you're saying? Like, as you get crummy food, or you're like, no, I just wondered.
No. So what we want to talk about, we are in lockdown 3.0.
3.0, yes. I mean, from what I've seen on some different timelines that were developed back last year, is that this is the third variation. I mean, they're proposing a fourth that will be coming up in the next number of months, and then maybe a fifth, based on all the conspiracy theorist forecasting, which, I mean, like, seemingly this is playing right into in a very interesting way. I mean, we've talked about how fantastic the messaging has been on a governmental level, but yeah.
So let's dive into some of this, and really where we want to conclude and what we want this whole conversation to be about is how we've made the decisions we've made.
Yeah.
Now I get it. We're pastors of a pretty small church in a small little part in rural Ontario. It's just not like we have massive voices, but what we feel like we wanted to share is a little bit, because we get a lot of pushback from people, and that is both good, both bad. You see both sides. You get all sorts of stuff sent to you. So how do we make those decisions, and why are we making the decisions we do? And I think even just going through that process, I'm hoping people, because the trolls were a perfect example of that. Were yelling at each other, and they did not clearly watch what was on there. They had no clue. They read a title, they went nuts. And so, how do we make that decision? So I guess first is let's talk about the decision that we've made as a church. Then I want to talk about some of the struggles with what we feel like the government is doing and why it's so hard right now. So what are we doing as a church?
Would it be fair to say that in a general sense that we've taken the approach of compliance to what's been asked of us? In a general sense, would that be fair as we have this discussion? Like, in a general sense, we've tried our best to comply with the rules and regulations and and never-ending situations and never-ending changes to those situations that would compliance be a fair way of saying that?
I think so. You know what? I think what we have done is we've been very intentional. If we are going to go against something, we have to be very justified. So one of the things if you watch us on Sunday mornings, you will see that I never wear a mask when I preach.
Right.
And that is one thing that Southwest Public Health has said. We want you to wear a mask when you preach. You're not seeing Doug Ford. You're not seeing tons of these people do it.
There's basically nobody who stands in front of a camera who's doing any sort of public speaking in an environment where they're socially distanced. Put a mask on.
Right. And then B, in our context, we have like 14 feet, and typically, especially because we're only at like 30% capacity, that front row's empty.
Yeah.
So you're like 20 feet from the first person.
It is a church service, so front rows are never
row,
full.
I know. I don't even know why you have a front row.
I guess the seating is too costly to be up in the front.
But yeah, so we have little things like that where we say no, but we've never done anything where we just go, forget it.
Right.
And
I mean, the
that was it.
limitations on worship, we've tried to respect in the sense of social distancing, masking people that aren't participating, and doing our best to limit the spreading of whatever is present by creating zones of safety for the people both in the congregation, but up on the stage as well.
Right.
I mean, we've done some things that are, I guess you could say, we believe are justifiable to be able to continue a semblance of normalcy.
But I think in our conversations with Southwest Public Health, for the most part, they have gone on a pretty common sense approach. When you call them and you say, hey, this is our situation, this is what we're doing, we want to follow the law, but it doesn't make sense in our context. Like when you think about when they make these laws, like just in Southwest Public Health, there are a huge variety of situations and locations. And just because you're a church doesn't mean the way you're laid out is the same. Your stage isn't the same. Your setup isn't the same. There's so much differences. So they've been pretty good with us. So we certainly, I would say, we lean on the side of compliance for sure.
I wonder what their room is like when it
Southwest
comes to
Public Health?
Yeah, I'm wondering what when
behind
they get
when
they get in, like when they get in their room and they're trying to make decisions based on whatever, and then they got to factor in everything.
Yeah.
I wonder how much from a positional standpoint this completely caught them off guard last year.
Sure.
Like, I mean, I know us walking into it just over a year ago definitely caught us off guard.
Yeah.
I mean, who's expecting to have happen what happened? Nobody. So in that sense, we've taken the approach from a rational sense that understanding that, I mean, we've had recent conversations which also imply this, that the government's just not capable of that level of secrecy and planning to be able to pull off what a lot of people would consider conspiracy. Right. And what you have is a bunch of different parts that are trying to come together to make the best decisions that they think are possible. And then you add in policymakers are a lot different than what you look at in terms of health providers and what their focus is and how does that work together. I think that's also something that we've tried to take into consideration. I mean, you know how it is. The first, like, you came back, you were in quarantine for 14 days from Bolivia. I mean, and then as we've progressed through this and the different situations, I mean, we've had it out. Yep. We've had conversations behind the scenes where we were like, after a news conference or our latest press release, we're like, we're not happy. We're
mad.
We're looking at situations, and I mean, we're ticked. We're trying to work through not only our personal emotional response, not only our response as parents, not only our response as community members, different roles. You with Fire Hall, me in different avenues in the community, whether it's like Christmas care, carrying cupboard, whatever. How we're going to respond to situations, but then, in a greater sense, then we have, okay, how are we going to do it as a faith community? Right. And then how do all those things work together for the best interest of everybody, not just our faith community, which is another part of the conversation that I think is important too.
Yeah. So I want to bring up two specific situations that have been brought to us a lot. And those all come out of Alberta. So I don't know what's going on in Alberta.
It's the wild, wild west, man.
Yes.
I'm telling you.
Shoot, I definitely would have thought more of these stories would be from Ontario. I'm a little bit surprised, but whatever. I have no idea. So there's the one where there is a pastor and the Calgary police and the COVID regulations officers, I'm not sure exactly what they're called down there. They come in during what looks like a service, and he goes off. Yeah. And chases them out. And so we have gotten this sent to us, and it's not just us, but you're seeing this posted by a lot of people on, the one side are just pumped about this. Like, every pastor should be doing this. Yeah. This should be happening. And so we've been wrestling through that. And then you have the other situation in Calgary where they have, I think that's Calgary again, where, I know it's Alberta for sure, but where they're fencing up around a church. And
so the first one, as you're talking, and you're talking about them having a service, and one of my thoughts, and this is maybe a little bit far off on the other extreme, is I remember this prayer meeting that was happening in the days of Jesus. And I mean, it was a very intimate moment of prayer. I mean, it was like on the doorstep of what we celebrate just this past weekend. I mean, they're having a prayer meeting in the Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, what came along? The authorities. Yeah. The last thing I saw was Jesus yelling at them and calling them the Gestapo and telling them to get out of here, and we have a freedom to do this. And so I think we're dealing a lot with people looking at a video like that and expressing how they feel about what's happening to them and trying to find a point to say, hey, look, like that's what we need because we need to get rid of what's happening. Right. And I understand that human side of it, but there's more to what's happening than just a video that's getting posted and a guy yelling at police officers who probably have family members and who probably have seen somebody sick and who are putting themselves in a first responder situation where they're in front of people constantly that aren't following protocols and endangering people around them because of that. I mean, there's a lot more to consider in these videos than just, look at that, they chased him out of there. And I mean, yeah.
Yep. So let's ground this conversation where I think it needs to be grounded, and that is defining what the role of the church is, because there's a couple of things happening here. And so number one is most of us disagree with how the government's handling this.
Oh, yeah.
On both sides. So when you hear the press conferences, they're fascinating. This last one, and I felt bad for Doug for it. I mean, I don't like a lot of his decisions, but he got blasted from the other side that said you didn't act early enough. And then he is getting blasted from our side for why did you even act? It is a tough thing. So there's that piece where, and I think you were touching on it, anytime somebody fights up against it, those of us who are opposed to it, there's a temptation for us to go, yeah, that's what we need to do. And so I feel like that's the part that we need to separate a little bit. Okay, but is that the role of the church? Is that the role that the church should be playing? Or why do we have churches in community? So there's been a lot of fighting about whether the church should be open. Churches are essential was a big thing. So now we sit in a place, and so if we can just paint a picture, because people who aren't familiar with the church maybe, right now, even during this lockdown, they have given us permission for religious services, weddings, and funerals to operate at 15% capacity.
Yeah, of our building. So yeah, we have a pretty, it's pretty expansive considering the limitations that are being put on the society in a general sense. Right. So I mean, they have definitely recognized in this 3.0 lockdown the importance of the fabric that the church and the faith communities in general provide to society, and the backstopping that the work that we do to promote well-being, mental health, and generally speaking, love your neighbor in a positive way, because they are looking at the numbers going, whoa, we need to stop the mental health crisis that's happening, and this is a good way to do it. Right. And I mean, let's not kid yourself. I mean, we've had this conversation before. The conservative government is not stupid that the majority of their base is also faith-based groups as well. Right. At least now.
And a lot of us ruralites.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people.
I'm sure there's a better word for that.
I mean, I like ruralites. Yeah,
nice.
Right. Yeah.
Those urbanites.
But again, back to your point.
Yes.
Talking about the role of the church. Yeah. I think that and what we are supposed to do inside of our communities and what we see or what we have seen in the life of Jesus. So I don't really see a lot of uprising in the type of kingdom that Jesus ushered in. Right. There was a different approach to how he wanted to change society. Which is, it goes against like me at the core of my nature to want to fight, in many ways, because I don't mind, I don't mind the fight. It feels good. Like it just there's just.
Hey, you have some Baptist roots, so if you guys know denominations. You got a little bit of that in you.
But I definitely think that's, I mean, yeah, it's definitely, the decision-making process is a place of conflict and how to have a right approach. Because it's not just about backstopping our community and looking out for the well-being of the people who attend at Mount Salem Community Church. We're also looking out for the well-being of our neighbors. Right. And how do we speak into that if what the interpretation of that is we're being selfish about what we think is best for just us? And not just for everybody.
Well, and I think, too, it comes down to what's your end goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And so if I get myself into a place where I'm screaming at the OPP and I'm screaming at these COVID people and I'm yelling and calling them Gestapo and all this kind of stuff, what's the end goal? What am I trying to accomplish as a church? So my understanding of the role of the church very much is to offer community, but then it's also to equip and prepare the saints for work, which in a very basic sense means it's to teach you how to be a good Christian. Right. It's to teach you how to live ethically. It's to teach you how to follow the teachings of Jesus, to understand Scripture, to have a relationship with God. It's to teach you all that kind of stuff so you can go and live it. When did the church become the avenue through which we needed to fight our politics? And I feel like that's where we're getting sidetracked here. Like, you want me as a pastor to be the guy who's fighting all these guys? Like, we have guys in our community who are great Christian leaders who are lawyers. Like, that's their job. Like, fight. Like, I'm all for standing up to things. And we have talked in other podcasts and in sermons and stuff about finding when we're willing to fully fight. But right now, I mean, we had the privilege yesterday of talking to Jeff Urick for half an hour.
Yeah.
And he was kind enough, and I sent him a bunch of messages saying, I disagree with that, I disagree with this, and I would like you to explain because I feel like your messaging sucks. Like, help me understand why you're doing this. And so he grilled him on a bunch of questions, and at the end of it, you remember that he's actually a pretty good guy. They're trying to do their best with this virus, and no matter what decision they make, they lose. So again, going back to, there are people who should fight that. Mm-hmm. And the court systems over time will hopefully either say this was wrong, that was wrong, this is right. But what I'm sensing as a church, at least from Southwest Public Health, is they've been really good to us. They've really understood, they've tried. And so then we as a church kind of, okay, well, what do we want the community to receive from us?
Right.
Why do we exist in Mount Salem? So we're in little rural outside of Elmer. What do we want this community to feel from us? And what do you think this community needs? I feel like the community has enough angry people that they really don't need the church to be like, hey, we're going to do some more yelling.
Yeah, we're going to be at the forefront of yelling and screaming.
Right.
Yeah, I think, talking about this situation with this gentleman, this pastor, and the police officers that came to have a conversation, we literally do not know anything else about that story but the video.
Right.
I one of the things that bothers me, and it's one of the reasons why I literally don't listen to much news anymore at all, is if they promote this idea of a conversation between two different opposing views, but neither one of them actually listen to each other.
No.
It's, I'm going to shout at you, you're going to shout at me, clip over.
Yep.
And basically clips like this that get posted only show that. Mm-hmm. We have no idea the history of that church. We have no idea the history of that man.
Well, so Fox News ran some stuff on him, and I was trying to pull up the article, and I can't right now, but from what he said in that article, he has experienced what a dictator would be like. And so for him, this is very triggering.
Right.
And so the way he was explaining it, so you can understand that. And so again, our point here with having this conversation is not to judge that church because we don't know the situation. Yep. I don't understand why that's happening. What people are, I think our point more is what people are doing is they're sending it to us saying, you should do the same. Right. You guys should be standing up. You should be doing this. And we're saying, well, this is the reasoning. This is the logic through which we got to these places where we're like, I don't want to do that, nor do I think it's the role of this church. And I think one thing that has also been interesting, I think, is the idea that not everybody has the same call.
Right.
So we're all Christians, but that does not mean every church in every place needs to make the same. There are certain churches in New York that stood up, and they managed to get the court to overturn their churches being closed.
Right.
That was great. Good for them. But in our region here in southern Ontario, for the most part, we have been at 30% capacity, which is pretty, can we just be honest here a little bit? Most churches aren't overflowing.
Right.
The church has been struggling over the last 10 to 15 years. People have struggled with faith. They've struggled with apathy. They've struggled with all this stuff. So it's not like you're dealing with facilities that are booming and busting out the seams, and now we're just 30%. That means like 10 No. Some people, Sunday morning was typically 30%.
So one of the approaches that we've taken, and we've talked about this before, is how can we help?
Yeah.
So whether that's not, you're cooking a meal for somebody, you're making a visit, you're going for a walk, you're serving in a capacity that's going to help the greater community. What difference can you make?
Right.
Because sometimes really and to defend people that are expressing themselves with an emotional response to this, which we are not immune from.
No, gosh, no. We've had a few of those.
I mean, all you have to do is spend any little time in this office to understand that our responses are real. Mm-hmm. And we have a spectrum of them. We get mad, we get upset, we get sad, we get depressed, we lash out.
Sometimes we swear a little bit.
Sometimes we need to go shoot a couple of hoops to calm ourselves down.
God, you said shoot a couple of hoops.
Yeah.
I was worried where you were going with that.
But
shoot a couple what?
The truth is that one of the best responses you can have to this is actually to choose to do something. And we can all make a difference in our homes or in our neighborhoods, with our kids, with a family member. We can all make a difference in some way. We can stand up and do something against what the perceived darkness is, not just post something on Facebook to get some of our anger and hurt out, and that's fine. You have a right to do that.
Sure you do.
But you also have an opportunity to speak into many different aspects of family and community that actually, at the end of the day, you can put your head on the pillow the night and say, man, I did something that I know improved the lives of the people that are living right next door to me.
Well, this past Sunday, I talked about choosing a new normal. And we're recording this a week early, so it's kind of weird. I'm like saying this past Sunday, but it's definitely this coming Sunday.
I was a little bit like,
anyways.
All right.
But talking about, like, we've been so focused on COVID that we forgot how much sucked before COVID.
Right. It's
We
not
forgot,
as if
like,
life was good.
No, there was so much to improve. And what I find fascinating is every church leader that I know has experienced growth during this last year. Every church that I'm aware of has experienced growth. And yet we're angry. And I feel like, as a church leader, I get so frustrated. I'm like, we have such an incredible opportunity to speak hope because people are afraid. I know for some of us who, the virus doesn't really scare me at this stage. I feel like Elmer, it has burned through so incredibly much that we have experienced quite a bit. It doesn't really scare me, but people are terrified. And they're terrified not just of the virus, but they're terrified of what debt is going to look like and what the government is doing. And they're afraid, and the church is doing nothing more but being another voice that's yelling and screaming. We have such an incredible opportunity to speak hope into our community, to say, hey, listen, there is hope, and we can do this together, and we can build a better future for our kids. If you're in a place where you're going to accept the conspiracy, then there's nothing really we can say to that, because if we say the conspiracy is not real, you just say, more evidence for the conspiracy. So you're a little bit screwed that way. But where we've made the decision is we have chatted pretty bluntly with Jeff Urich. We've chatted with our MP. We have chatted with other leaders. We have really tried to navigate our way through this, and we really have come to a conclusion that there is a virus. I think there is risk. The question just is, which is the best way to manage it?
Right.
And when you look in the states, you see some states that managed it one way and they had high cases, and other states managed it another way and they had high cases. And at the end of the day, there's the only consensus that I've found so far is that there's no consensus. And in every state, there's so many underlying factors. Well, how healthy is your population? Are you a retirement state versus a very young state? Are you a bunch of farmers versus, there's all those things. There's endless variables. So I think we can argue and say our government didn't handle it well. But if you look back at history, can you think of one time where all of us were like, the government nailed this? Like they did
We're
this
still paying income taxes, which was a temporary tax from World War II.
Yeah, well, it's temporary.
Well done.
I'm sure it'll end soon. I'm sure it'll. So I think as we go forward from this and we move into the future here, like we need to get off the angry train. We need to get off the bitter train. So many people are concerned about mental health. How does you screaming at your kids? How does you lashing out at your kids? How does you sitting at home being angry and frustrated and miserable? Although you have a full logical reason to do that. We're frustrated. My kids' baseball seasons are being impacted. Elmer soccer has already shut down. There's so much to be. I get it. But if we're really thinking long term, we're coming out of this. What are you doing to make your family stronger? Like, one of the things that's really hit me is I think we need to go back to loving family. We're supposed to spend 28 days in our own house, and we're just we're devastated. 28 days? Right? So I think there's a piece in our community where we kind of go, hey, you have the privilege of 28 days in a culture where we were so busy, we barely saw our kids. You barely see anybody. You're stressed, you're overworked, you're overtired. You have 28 days to take rest, to spend quality time, to really, invest in those relationships. But we're bitter, we're angry, and I think we're completely wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
Now on the flip side, small businesses.
Catastrophic. Let's be honest. Hey, small businesses, we're going to open up, order all the food that you need, get ready to go. Here we're at. Okay, shut down. Bye food. Hey, but we're going to have your back, and we're going to give you some money. Yeah. I mean, let's mentally crush people to a point where they literally have, no hope in front of them of supplying for their family, let alone paying their mortgage. Yeah. I mean, let's just be real. And there's no person across any spectrum that I've talked to that think that's a good idea.
No.
I mean, we're perfectly good with having the mega stores open, which are places of... They are not sanitized.
No.
It's terrible.
Were you in the mall?
But you cannot have a mom and pop store with one customer inside who's actually contributing to the local economy. And there's a sign I saw posted the other day: not buying a CEO is third house.
Yeah.
And I mean, good for you if you have the third house. I would like to make sure my neighbor is able to pay their mortgage.
Right.
I mean, I think that matters.
So I think there's two things with that we want to speak to. And I think the one is advocate for your small businesses.
Yeah.
Like, get off of Facebook, send Jeff Urich, send Karen Vecchio, send all your people messages.
And if you can, don't order so much from Amazon.
That's what I was going to say, part 2. So you nailed it.
Wow, I mean,
like we
Jeff
work
Bezos
together.
does not need to increase his net worth.
A lot of these places can do curbside. So
Right.
we got Campbell's and Elmer. We got a bunch of stories. I know I've allowed Johnny's. I've given them a lot of donations lately. Great food, but we got a bunch of places like
Great
that.
food. We live in a
support.
fantastic community that
Yes, we
has
do.
incredible services, and it's just an unbelievable people.
Yep.
I think they should be supported.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's where do something about it.
Yeah.
Like I feel, and some of those that are closed, like a friend who just started hairdressing school, hairdressing. I'm sure that's not the right barbering.
I don't.
I don't know.
Who started?
Nathan.
Oh, nice.
Nathan Krebs, hi buddy. Hey, and Robin Kent and a few of the other guys like that like their industry got shut down. That's devastating. But then again, one of my goals is as soon as they open up, and you try to support as much as you can. And if your neighbors are hurting, we've said this often in our services. We've said this that reach out.
Yeah.
Like, we have to get through this together. I don't like a lot of the rules that they've made. I appreciate the government's trying to do something, and we will all bicker on that. But at the end of the day, taking care of our community is our responsibility. That's on me and you.
Yep.
That's on Trevor. Even the millennials.
I'm not a millennial. You're actually a millennial.
I know I'm a millennial.
Okay.
Have you told yourself that though? No.
Yeah. Right? I mean, it's on everyone. And I think the best communities are not communities that have incredible government. It's the best communities are those communities who learn to really care about each other. And I think that's what makes churches so unique, that they build this culture of people who are so different and so diverse, and yet you learn to really love each other. It's what makes, joining the fire hall so incredible. You have a group of people that you go through things together with, and you have this, but that's community.
Right.
And that's what we need to get back to, is finding a way to connect with our neighbors, to care for our neighbors, to care for our community. And yes, fight the government on some
protest.
of this. Do it in a
say
good,
what you need to say.
but do it in a good way. Do it in a right way. There are good ways that just screaming at people does not help.
Constructively write an email and make requests and put positive pressure. And I mean, and let's be fair. Let's pray for our leaders. I mean, looking at Mr. Ford, he's not looking the most healthy.
No, he's wearing it.
The stress and the situation is wearing on him, and some of the others that are in the cabinet. And whether or not you like Mr. Ford or don't like Mr. Ford, if you're a person who's walking around going, "Hey, everybody should be masked up for everybody's well-being," have a little bit of that consideration towards the person who's trying to make good decisions in a situation that nobody has lived through in the last 100 years.
No.
So let's be fair. And yeah, we're in agreement. Some of the decisions that are being made, we think are wrong and suck. That's just bottom line. But at the same time, the guy's a human being. He's a dad. He's somebody's partner. He's trying his best. And we might not think that all the time when we look at it, because we only see his position, but there's so much more to him than just that.
Well, and I would say to Christians listening especially, even when you really hate somebody and they're your enemy, Jesus says you're supposed to pray.
Really? Jesus says that?
Sure. There isn't a loophole for Christians to, and I think this is, if they're a politician, then I can scream. No, not if you're a follower of Jesus. And I think that's where we have to come back to, is for those of us who are followers of Jesus, we're followers of Jesus first, and that has to become our priority. And how we make choices out of this, first go through that lens, and then they go through other stuff.
It doesn't mean that we don't process all the emotions that come with these decisions. We do, because we are human. Yeah, well,
you heard it when Patrick started talking about small businesses. You can see the little fire come, because it frustrates us, because we have friends, we have people we love who are really struggling. For those of you guys who are listening, if you're struggling, just don't struggle alone. There are great resources. There are great, especially in Elmer, there's some really incredible churches. There's some great people.
You're surrounded by fantastic neighbors. I guarantee it.
So reach out. With that, that's going to be our 30 minutes. We're gonna wrap it up. We have taken enough of their time.
Yeah, enough.
They need to go outside where it's
beautiful. Hey, if you get join the gallery, click follow, click subscribe, whatever it is you need to click on. But become the Peanut Gallery. Type in whatever you need to comment to us as well. We're used to hearing it, and we'd like to hear more of it. So
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. See you next time.